And raised on daily meat, wheat, and dairy diet. He went through the journey of learning about how negative thoughts and emotions affect our health and how emotional release in raw foods helps us recover our health, well-being, and propels our spiritual life. Thank you, Emmanuel.
Yay!
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank Mike and Denise for having me and their invitation, and for everybody that is here. So, the topic is fruits and vegetables on the raw state and how they will affect our life, not just our health, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, and what that will do for us. Okay, and usually I don't talk about myself at all. I like to talk about my teachers and the things that I've done and what they have done and what I followed. But I think for this nature of what we're at right now, I think I'll tell a little bit about myself so you understand where I'm coming from with it. So I come from a place called Argentina. You know, if you guys ever heard about it, it's the last country on this continent. It's all the way down south where people go to Antarctica. Okay, and I grew up over there, and after that I spent some time in Brazil. So you understand about Argentina and the diet. I don't know if you can see that well, but we have more cows than people in Argentina. Okay, we have about 45 million people, and we have about 55 million cows over there. So everybody in Argentina, we're known for the beef, and my family, my grandfather and my dad and all my uncles, they work on the meat business. So I grew up basically surrounded by not only meat eaters, but everything else that I'll show you in a minute. So the typical diet in Argentina, growing up as a kid, is, and believe me, I was about 4 or 5 years old, and my breakfast and something called merienda, and I'll explain what that is coffee with milk, bread and butter, and dulce de leche. If you know what dulce de leche is, it's condensed milk, boiled. Okay? And I get fed that every single day of my life when I was a kid. Okay? And after that, every single day for me, for my lunch, was steak and mashed potatoes. And if somebody asked me if I ate vegetables, I'll say mashed potatoes. And they made it actually with butter and milk. And my merienda is something that you eat like about 5 o'clock, okay? And you have like a second breakfast pretty much, which is another coffee with bread and butter. And then dinner is another steak with mashed potatoes, or like something like milanesa over there. It's a deep fried and breaded and with eggs. And then you eat like about 9:30 at night or 10. It's like a, European schedule type of situation. So when I talk about fruits and vegetables and people tell me, oh, Emmanuel, but you know what, there's certain, habits, or there are certain things that we bring with us from our family or tradition and everything else, I say, look, this is where I come from, okay? So there's hope, okay? So most people, they start changing their diet. What I notice, along these events and places that I go to, they talk about some, physical ailment or something happened to some, family member that they got sick and they decided to start change their diet. Some other people go for, I don't know, some education like, animal rights and something else. They start not feeling right. And I have none of that background, and that's why I'm sharing this. About my mid-20s, I had already all the itises and all the things that you can imagine. I had a lot of allergies and other things. I had appendicitis. They cut me open to take that out, and many other things. Okay, too many to list over there. But I was a happy kid. But as we grow up, I started to get very angry and very unpleasant to be around. Not just about myself, but I realized that the people around me, I'm like, I have to do something better. There's that frustration that what the hell are you doing with your life, and that starts percolating, okay, in our daily, and I'm like, it has to be something better to life. So I started a journey of, accidentally, honestly, I started seeing Peruvian shamanism, and I started meditating, and I started doing yoga, and I started to get invited to these places to start to actually do something about my emotional state of being, really. I realized that I have a lot of negative thoughts, negative emotions. I was just an angry kid.
And I was tired of going to, parties and bars and all that stuff. I couldn't handle it. And I knew that that was a dead end that had like no exit for me. Okay? So I started going to sweat lodges and all sorts of events like that. And I dedicated a lot of time to that. So what I realized is as soon as I started doing those deep emotional healings, and I was not upset at other people anymore, I was not angry at other people or myself, I started forgiving myself, all of a sudden, my diet started changing. I cut out all those friendships that didn't like me not doing what they were doing, and I realized that were just friendships, they were just companions doing those things. When you have like friends that like to go drinking. But if you stop drinking, all of a sudden you don't have nothing in common anymore, right? So what happened is, on its own, my habits changed and it started to build that strength to say no to the bad habits that I had. So it was effortless. It was something that you don't have to actually say, you know what, today I'm gonna put my foot down and I'm not gonna eat that anymore. If we have that emotional charge inside, if we're feeling like crap inside, it's like a magnet, okay? I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that in a second, okay? So, our food cravings and all that are probably, because when we think about negative emotion, negative thoughts, we think people that they're just doing drugs, or they're like at a bar and they're very alcoholics or something like that. But we don't think about the small things that we do. Okay, the little boycotts that we do, those are the ones that build up negative habits. They're like little dings in our consciousness, in our state of mind, and in our body. Because we think, oh, you know what, I just eat my chocolate once a week, and then I eat my other thing once a week, and then all of a sudden you start adding up all the things that we do once a week. Okay, but when those things that we're holding inside are gone, all of a sudden there's no more pull towards those things. Okay. So about, I don't know, maybe a couple of years into it, people started noticing that I was conducting myself in a very different way. I was not getting triggered so easily from things. And I was able to be a little more calm. And also, my health started to change. People are like, oh, you look radiant today. You look great today. So at the beginning, I found a lot of resistance from all my friends and family members. They're like, oh man, you're only in your 20s. Why you need to get healthy? Why you don't want to go partying? All the 20-year-old plus whatever, they are doing that. Why you want to be different? So I found all this resistance from all the people around me saying, you know what? Why you're doing that? You don't have to. But then when they saw me being more radiant and calm and ease, they started asking for advice. They started seeing that there was something to it. And that's how I started helping people. Okay? So it was not out of like me wanting and going to get a certification or me saying, yes, this is what I want to do. It was kind of like an organic growth into it out of my own experience and how I was just living my own life and how that had an impact. So the things start changing basically when I remember one day after, I don't know, I can't remember actually how long it was. I went to the store and every day I'll go to the store and make a fresh meal. It was years into this lifestyle, and one day I realized I was walking by an aisle and I looked at all the meat, and besides the fact that it didn't smell good anymore, I realized it's been a minute. And it took me like about 15 minutes to think when was the last time that I had eaten meat. It was because I was just eating what I wanted on the daily basis. And that was a very good relationship or very good reflection of how I was feeling. If you ever studied yoga or any other spiritual practice, they talk about energy a lot. And there's one passage that is very important, and they say, your thoughts can move energy. Okay? Your thoughts can move prana. But that is an incomplete phase or phrase. The next phase of it, or the next phrase, is also that prana or energy can move thought as well. And the example of it is that if you go to a very strenuous exercise, you will feel calmer after, right? It will have an impact in your mind. You can go for like a little run, it might not do nothing for you. But if you actually go and push your body strongly, when you're tired physically, you lay down, and not just you're gonna have a good night of sleep, but your mind will calm down. And all the things that are actually tormenting us, it will give us a break. And that's why there's a whole branch of yoga, and there's a whole branch of athleticism and other, people that understand that the physical body, when you push it, it will have an impact in your mind. Okay? So the big leap was when I realized that the food, not just I was having any more cravings anymore, but that the food, the same than the exercise, could have an impact on my mind and on my body to push it to be in a higher, calmer, and better space as well. Now, this is something that people have a lot of trouble with, okay? I think I should have found a few more pictures about this. When we started going into our own nature, our own spiritual path, we start reconnecting to ourselves. We start surrendering to certain things, okay? There's a lot of truth about our own, not just emotional state, but what we have done to other people. You can call it sin. If you follow yoga, it's called yamas, which means that which will kill you, okay? But as we start our spiritual journey, we start getting closer and closer to nature. We start moving away from self-destructive behaviors. We start moving a little bit away from the crutches of technology. And we realize, and at some point we start surrendering our ego to our physiology as well. If you look at the Bible or other passages, they talk about us being the image of God or higher beings. But because we have a very materialistic view nowadays, we think that it's just the body. And that's why we have all those pictures of, let's say, on the Sistine Chapel, of God reaching out with its finger, towards people. But we don't think that could be also the image of our consciousness, okay? So if we bring it back to the physiology of the body, we don't look like giraffes, we don't look like horses, we don't look like cows, so we cannot eat just grass. We don't look like wolves, dogs, cats, mountain lions, so we cannot eat only meat. We're not birds, so we cannot eat only worms and seeds. So we need to surrender to the fact that the only animal that is the closest to us and has 98% of the same DNA is a primate. Not a regular monkey, a primate. And primates are frugivores. Okay? They eat primarily fruit. So when we start investigating, the first thing that happened was my training in the mind saying, that's too much sugar and not enough protein. That's what everybody says. And of course, my mind went to the same space. And I fought it for a long time. I was like, that can't be it. That can't be it. The internal conflict was there because of the, all the time listening to the same story. So I started a raw food diet on a high-fat diet, basically. When you eat a lot of fat, oils, avocados, nuts, and seeds, you can sprout them. So they're raw. If you are, more into the living foods, you really don't want to eat maybe olives, but you substitute it for sprouted nuts, whatever, fine. In time, something else happened. I started just getting educated on physiology because everybody that was helping, I realized that when they were having an emotional release, they will want to eat better. but they had questions. They didn't have that intuition to go there because they were like, Emmanuel, I grew up, the same way you did. Can you help me out? What can I do to get closer to this? So I started teaching about juice fasting and about other things to people. I also did some basic research, and I was astonished to know I was at the time helping a psychiatrist. He had some difficult cases on his clinic, and I'll go, and in 2 months I was able to get people out of the meds. And so he got curious, a little upset, ego bruised, and went there and said, hey, what Emmanuel is doing with you? How come you don't want the meds that I'm prescribing you anymore? And they were to be like, well, he put me in a juice fast and he changed my diet and we did all this emotional release, And so he can talk to me. And then we had a meeting with all the other psychiatrists, about 10 of them. And I asked them a simple question. And they couldn't answer me back. And I was like, do you guys know where the serotonin is produced in the body? And none of them could. They all had their, diploma on the back, but none of them could tell me that the 93% of the serotonin was produced in the gut. So I was telling me, how do you expect your clients to be happy, giving them synthetic serotonin when you can just clean their gut and have them be happy? Okay. So all this studies on physiology, because people were asking me, because they had the monkey brain, left brain that was inquisitive. Okay, I had to find out also that I had to remove that idea of that fruits and vegetables with too much sugar, and the way that happened was also in another more spiritual side. But then I came to know that simple sugars, fructose, for example, complex carbohydrates, fats, and amino acids, which is what makes proteins, are all made out of the same components. They're all made out of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And then the liver can actually switch and do whatever it needs. Okay? And that's why people can survive in any of those. But when you start mixing them, it creates problems. And that's why people don't do good. And that's why if you go to a doctor, if you have candida, they're gonna tell you that to stop eating sugar. Okay? So because we're trained into that side, I went first for a high-fat, low-glycemic, raw diet. I had an amazing experience. I did that for 8 months, and my life changed dramatically. And I was like, this is it. We're in the right direction. And my spiritual life only it was like turbo. If I'll go meditate, if I'll do other things, if I'll go do yoga, the intuition levels, it was like one day waking up in a whole different reality. Okay. So I had to find out why there's nothing being said about this. Why nobody's talking about fruits and vegetables? Why nobody's talking that the raw fruits and vegetables have a strong impact on your health and on your spirituality, and there's something gonna happen. So I was like, okay, somebody's doing it. So I had to dig out. Who are the people that are doing it? And I found out that the high priests of the Inca Empire used to eat only raw fruits and vegetables and nothing else. Then I found out that the people in India, there's a book, have you ever heard about Paramahansa Yogananda? He's one of the guys, he's one of the pioneers in bringing yoga to the United States. He's a guy that in the 40s was being invited to go to the White House, and he was a very, very high level yoga, Kriya yoga teacher. And if you read his version of the Bhagavad Gita, he says that once the yogi is able to kick out the ego out of his mind and allow the soul to come in and take over his body fully, it has no more ego cravings, it will only eat raw fruits and vegetables unaltered, as nature made it. Nothing else. Then I was talking to a priest on a local church here in Naples, from an Orthodox church. And he's like, yeah, the monks in Mount Athos, they eat raw fruits and vegetables about 3 times a week. And they consider their fasting situation. So it's not like, you enter Christianity, it's like, barbecue central. Even though it's portrayed like that, it's not. Okay? Remember, that they fast. They talk about water fasting and all that stuff. And there's somebody else that is what we consider to be the creme de la creme of all this. Okay. Before we get to talk about them, what the fruits and vegetables can do to you. Once you start eating them, we spent quite a bit of time in the islands of Hawaii, and there was a time for many years that we were able to eat locally grown organic fruits in a long period of time, and that had a tremendous impact in our consciousness. Because we hear, oh yeah, eat local, oh yeah, eat seasonal, but when you're eating only fruits and vegetables raw, locally grown, per season, you understand that they're not only divinely designed to help us out. If you study a little bit about Ayurveda, study a little bit about Chinese medicine, you will see that each food has a purpose to heal a certain organ and is related into the time of the year. For example, you don't have to cleanse your liver during the summertime. A Chinese doctor will never do that for you. They've been studying this for 5,000 years, okay? They will tell you there's a specific time for that. The same for your lungs, okay? They will not gonna do that. So when you start looking at nature and you see people, for example, eating cucumbers in the middle of the winter in Toronto, you say like, there's something off about that. So when we start separating ourselves from nature and we start eating, regardless if it's vegan or vegetarian or other things, if we eat the same foods throughout the year and we're not paying attention that that food in that time of the year has a function for us, we're missing out. I just want to remind you guys a little about that. Before 1940, there were no refrigerators. Okay, so we had to eat local and fresh. And this whole movement of eating grains is actually coming from a different space. Before refrigerators, it was very difficult for us to maintain meat. It had to be dehydrated. Imagine 200 years ago, you with a piece of metal in your hand, butchering a whole cow. And what to do with it? A pain in the butt. Difficult. You'll get flies and bleh. The level of hygiene was so low, people didn't eat that much. So when people are talking about, oh, the Mediterranean diet is so good for you and all that stuff, I went to Italy and I met 80-plus-year-old people, ladies smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee at the beach, and they eat meat once every 2 weeks, okay? Because it was difficult. So it's not part of their thing. But when we're talking about grains, I want to mention this because this is the Veg Fest and a lot of people hear about the veganism. Back in the day, you couldn't transport things and they would spoil. The only thing that you could transport and move around were grains, if they didn't get infested with rats living in it. So actually grains are war food. That's the only thing they could transport for their troops. Okay, everybody else would bring their own food right there in their backyard. Okay, even if they had chickens or whatever else. So when we enter the grain diet, which is supposed to be for some birds and not for us, we don't digest it unless we cook it. We enter a space of a lot of mucus building in our diet. Now, mucus is something that has not been talked about yet. You will hear about it perhaps in the future. It's been around for a long time. If you want to hear more about mucus, there was a guy called Arnold Ehart back in the late 1800s. He had kidney issues in Germany. He went to France to learn about fruitarianism and the fruit cleanses. He went to Switzerland to learn about water fasting with melted water from the Alps. And he healed it all. He went to spend some time in Italy just eating figs and other things. Boom. The guy became super. Not only that, he started talking about his spiritual awakenings due to it. And his health completely not only reversed, but he became stronger, younger. He became an athlete, basically, by eating that way. So this is not new, but currently is now being talked about. The same that 5 years ago, I was talking to my, I don't want to call them clients, but my friends that I was helping. I was talking about Candida, and they were like, that doesn't exist. My doctor said it doesn't exist. Until the Harvard Medical School came out with a legal paper saying that even though antibiotics help people, as a side effect, they cause Candida. And that's because they kill the gut flora. And then when you don't have bacteria to balance it, the fungi will go crazy. So if you're going right now, if you had in your history some sort of eating antibiotics and you're eating a vegan food, be careful, you could have a flare-up of Candida, okay? So I've been given the wave, they need to hurry up. I can talk forever, okay? So when we surrender to this, there's going to be a long transformation that's going to happen. When we start eating the fruits and vegetables that are divinely designed to do what they're supposed to do, all the toxins in the body are going to start leaving the body, and you're going to start meeting all your demons. You're going to start meeting the memories of all the things that bad you have done to yourself and to others. And hopefully at that time, because we have matured with time, we are going to have a better space to deal with them in a good way. And we're going to be able to forgive ourselves, say I'm sorry to the people that we have, done whatever, the typical healing process. Okay, I'm sorry, thank you, I love you. Another thing that is not being talked to is that all those foods, they create a mucus, they create, I just want to go back to the 1800s really quick before I tap into this. Those are the times that we started opening people after they died. And from then until now, we have found that the average person dies with 10 to 20 pounds of undigested food, old fecal matter in their gut. So what happens is that people don't talk about food combination. Oh yeah, people in the 1800s used to eat all, local. I just made it right here, right now. It's great. No, you know what? They're also dying with 10 to 20 pounds of old poop inside them, where what? Parasites, bacteria, fungi, and other things live. Okay. The only people they talk about parasites, and this is I could talk for a whole afternoon about this, are the Essenes. The only people you have not heard about this, the same you have not heard about mucus probably, the parasites. They come to eat up the obstructions that we create by bad eating due to our bad emotional and mental state. So they come first to opening up those areas. They become obstructed, but after that they become, comfortable. We give them housing, we give them food, and they start proliferating, and they become, big colonies, big families. And then all of a sudden they start affecting your mind. Even the CDC admits that parasites actually cause anxiety and depression. So why we're not giving people antiparasiticals instead, okay? The Essenes were and are more of a esoteric branch of Christianity. They've been around for a long time, and they are the only ones that talk about raw foods, and they talk about the purification of the body and how parasites are monsters like demons that when they in your mind, they make you think all these bad thoughts, and while you're purifying yourself and they come out of your body, you come back into your true self. Okay. So if you decide ever to go raw food, not just, it can be the high fat, but primarily if you do the high fruit diet, you're gonna look like that emoji. Your mind's gonna you're gonna explode. Okay, seriously, you're gonna wake up one day in a different world. Your perception, your smell, your hearing, everything's gonna be like, what just happened to me? And you're gonna realize you were like a zombie before. And you thought that you were great. You thought that you were healthy. You thought that I was just doing okay. I'm just going with it. It's all good, But if you do this, you're gonna realize that you're actually a Ferrari putting 87 gasoline on it. All right. If you're a Ferrari, just put, prime, please. Okay. This is just a little chart about once you get that awakening, that poof in your mind, okay, you're gonna realize that actually all the raw foods you're eating are still, even though they're organic, they are industrially conventionally grown, and they're lacking minerals. And I can also spend a whole other, maybe afternoon talking about minerals. But basically, if you're not eating organic, besides the fact that you're actually eating glyphosate and it's not going to be, inactive because you just picked it, it continues to be active for about 50 years. So actually you're eating that actively, and it's going to happen. Whatever's happening to the bugs is going to happen to you, ulcerations and other kind of problems due to some destructive behaviors. But the minerals are the responsible for our neuroconnections. Okay, the only thing that I remember about a chemistry class in high school was one guy. He came here, my teacher, and he put a wire in water. He plugged it to the wall, and on the other side, he had a wire on the water with a light bulb. And he said, "Look, there's no electricity going on." And then he grabbed a thing of salt, and he went like this. And the more salt he put in there, the light bulb went whoop. Okay? So when we're eating acidic food, it doesn't matter if it's vegan, if it's a soup, even spinach, when you cook it, it becomes acidic. And when it becomes acidic, the body has to come into balance in a pH level, and it's gonna take out all the minerals that it can to balance that out. So of course, if you're eating meat and dairy, it's gonna be extremely acidic, but anything that is being cooked becomes acidic, and it's gonna rob more minerals to actually balance its pH. And then, so I tell people, I can prove you through explaining minerals that we're getting dumber by each bite of cooked food that we take, because our neural connections are not going to have the same amount of minerals they need to transfer information. 1 minute. Okay, let me see if I can say something else. Okay, so that of minerals and all that conversation took me to learn about agroforestry, because as we go into our spiritual awakening, we realize that actually we need to follow nature instead of technology. And agroforestry is a way that we can mimic nature and grow food at the same time. And this is what recovers soils and what recovers the minerals in the food and all that stuff. And if I wanted to be the best of myself, not just for myself, but for my family, my friends, and everybody else, I need to bring those minerals back here so that I can function better. And that's why I spent many years learning about agroforestry, and that's a big part of what we do today. And I can talk for a whole other day about this. So one of the things, just to wrap it, because I probably have only 30 seconds, is that we are in this phase where we have really put ourselves in the hands of technology without realizing that we need to surrender toward our true nature. And nature itself already has the answer for all those things. We don't need a new pill. We don't need a new medication. All we need is to just go do, nature right, give it some love, bring it back, to what it used to be, divinely made already, as it was, to help us out. Really, nature's there to help us out and not to help us out. But because we have accumulated so many sins, we just deny its love and denies all the good things that it has for us. And I just wanted to leave it at that. And if you guys have any questions, or if you guys want to talk more, I'm happy to chat. We're on the shade on the other side of the field over here. Thank you so much, guys.
Amen.